All right, all you positive heads. On this week's Soul Share episode, I'm very excited to have Kim Coots here with me on the show. Kim is an Inc. 500 award winning business executive turned evidential medium and spiritual healer after the unexpected death of her only child and mother. I can't imagine that as the catalyst for something like this. What a powerful transition. Kim, super excited to have you here and hear all about your story.
Well, thank you for having me and letting me share with your audience.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Like I said, I just like, and we talked a little bit before we began. I'm like, wow, what a, what a catalyst for, shifting into the work that you do. And I'd love to, well, before I hear your backstory or more about it, I'd love to just start with my cliche opening question, which is this. You're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You have 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
I say my passion is to help people who've experienced the death of a loved one to connect with their loved ones in heaven and to live empowered after loss, even
Yeah.
even though they're grieving.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a beautiful passion. And I'd love to just, if you would share, whatever feels relevant, of course, to share about your journey and your backstory.
Well, 5 years ago, I never would have imagined I'd be here talking about this topic today. This was not part of my life plan in any way, shape, or form. To be a evidential medium and to be working with people and being an advocate for after-death communication. In fact, I was a skeptic and uncomfortable about the topic. I kind of avoided it, even though I'm a very spiritual person.
Mm-hmm.
But then the unexpected death of my daughter really changed the whole trajectory of my life and my career.
Wow.
And she died suddenly of a fentanyl overdose, which was a shock
Wow.
to me because I didn't know that she was using drugs. She
Wow.
had been in
I mean,
recovery.
you didn't know she was using any substances.
No, she had actually been in recovery for a couple of years, and I had suspected it earlier on, but then
Gotcha.
her life got back together and things were going well. But she had been in recovery and didn't want me to know about it. So even though my intuition told me something wasn't right,
Yeah.
um, I had suspected it. It was really a shock to me.
Wow.
And she was in recovery and clean for 2 years, but when COVID hit, they shut down all the clinics and counseling, and it was devastating for a lot of people when that
Yeah.
happened. And
A
she
lot
happened
of
to be
drug
one of,
use increased during that time, right?
yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of the drugs that were purchased as something else, whether it was Xanax or different drugs, were actually fentanyl.
Yeah.
And there's
Right.
been just a huge spike in fentanyl overdoses.
Wow. Wow. So, yeah. Do you know if she was trying to take fentanyl purposefully or it was one of these like,
No,
yeah.
no, because the she was on, and I learned this after her passing from her boyfriend, but she had been in treatment for 2 years and was using a drug to help not use other drugs
Yeah.
and opioids.
Yeah.
And when the clinic closed, they changed her medication. She had to go to a different clinic and they changed her medication and she got really sick from it. So it was kind
Wow.
of until I can get a different medication, I'm just
Wow.
going to use this once. And it happened to be fentanyl.
Wow. Wow. That's even makes it even harder, huh?
Yes, it was a very big shock to me. She's my only child. It was a month after her 26th birthday. And, you know, not only
Wow.
her dying, but the source of her death was a shock as well.
Yeah, right, right. You said she was 26?
She had just turned 26.
Wow. Wow.
So that's kind of the catalyst for it. I mean, up until that point, as I said, I was really uncomfortable about after death communication, and I started receiving signs from her right away.
Mhm.
And in my heart, I knew these signs were from her. They were undeniable to me, but my mind was wondering if I was making it up because I was so devastated and in
Yeah.
such shock. And she was very persistent on sending me signs. And
Wow.
a few months earlier, I was just finishing up this is kind of a synchronicity thing, but I was finishing up my professional certification in astrology.
Mm.
And my teacher did a chart reading, and she said, "You're a medium."
Wow.
And I said, "No, I'm not interested in that. That's
Yeah.
not my thing. Not interested in it." Um, so I kind of let it go. But she said, "I'm going to send you the name of a teacher in case you decide to pursue that." And I just kind of filed it away. Well, when this happened, when my daughter died, and then 3 weeks later, my mother unexpectedly died. I'm at 64 years old. So I had two shocking deaths within
Wow.
3 weeks.
Your mother was only 64? Yeah. Wow.
She had gone in for a back surgery and got C. diff infection in the hospital, and
C.
that
diff?
went
Wow. My,
septic.
my mother got that a few years back.
uh, Septic for her. And 3 weeks to the day that my daughter died, my mother passed as well.
Oh my goodness. How did you even? I can't imagine. That had to be
Yeah,
the most
it,
incredible portal of grief a person can experience.
it was really unbelievable to me. I think I was just in so much shock.
Yeah.
And on top of that, receiving all these signs from my daughter that I was really torn about because I'm a spiritual person. I've been a shamanic healer for 20 years. I'm kind of in the closet with my business career.
Hmm.
So communicating with spirit wasn't anything new to me, but with people who have transitions was fairly new to me. I've only had two experiences with that prior to that. And one was 2 months before my daughter died. I got a visit from my grandmother who died in 2004. Very prominent visit from her. Scared me to death because I'd never had an experience like that.
Wow.
And
Was it like you visually saw her or?
yeah, it was so real to me. Like I'm just sitting at my desk working,
Hmm.
and I just knew my grandmother was there. I don't know
Wow.
how to explain it, but she shared with me that there was going to be death in our family and
Wow.
not to worry about it. Everything was going to be okay. And it scared me.
Of
So this was
course.
at the beginning of COVID too. So I was already worried about COVID.
Oh man.
And, I was crying. I told my husband, I'm like, my grandmother just visited me. I don't know how to explain this. I've never had an experience like this before. I had a dream about my grandmother's death before she died, and she died 2 months later, but I didn't think it was, I
Yeah.
thought it was coincidence. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, even though I had that visit from her, it was still a shock to me when it happened.
Yeah. Right.
And I didn't expect it to be my daughter.
Yeah. Right. 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 Um. Wow. Yeah. I had a spirit visitation in the dream state from my grandfather and grandmother a while back, and it led to like some. They passed information to me that led to real world like experiences and results for my son. It was like a really powerful, experience, but it wasn't like, hey, I'm coming to tell you about a death coming. That's like what a challenging way to get. Um, it's kind of like you would almost want grandma to come through, and it's like, hey, I'm reassuring you everything's okay, and it's like joyous, not like, hey, guess what? You can see me, and guess what? Bad news. It's like, really?
Yeah, I didn't feel like it was like negative when she was here. I feel like it was almost like a preparing me for it kind of
Mm-hmm.
message, but I wasn't prepared for that or familiar with that. And,
Yeah.
I was already worried about COVID because my daughter had asthma and my mom, like I had donated my kidney to her, so she was immunosuppressed. So I was
Wow.
worried about both of them just from COVID.
Yeah.
Um, so
Wow.
yeah, and with the signs that was receiving from Kira, my daughter, I wanted proof that it was real.
Yeah.
And I looked up that teacher that my astrology teacher had given me on mediumship. And mediumship, for anyone who isn't familiar with it, is when a person who has the ability to communicate with those who have transitions brings messages and evidence to their living loved ones. So that's what mediumship is. And I reached out to this teacher, and although he was very skeptical about it and really didn't know what to believe about it, I just started researching everything I could on after death communication.
Yeah.
I found this research that said over 60 million people have reported an after death connection or communication,
Wow.
and that's really not that rare.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know what signs to look for, or like me, they doubt it. They
Yeah.
aren't sure.
Right. Right. Wow. And then so after you started researching it, then I'm assuming you started like you learned under you had a mentor, and you it just started fully opening for you. Then is that
Yeah, I decided to take the certification for evidential mediumship. So there's different forms of mediumship. Evidential mediumship is about bringing evidential information that there's no way the medium could know
yeah
to share with a living loved one to validate that connection.
yeah
And that sounded like what I was looking for because I was in the business world for 30 years as a business executive. So I'm used to, fact-based, data-driven information and you can't get it wrong. And, that was my world. So I wanted proof. I didn't want this delusion. Like that was a really big issue for me that I had to confront was, do I want to pursue this possibility that after death communication is real and find that I can have a connection with my daughter on the other side? And if I find it's not real or I can't do it, am I going to be able to live with that? So like
yeah
not trying, not pursuing it almost gave me a possibility that it is there, but uh, finding out if it wasn't there, I don't know if I could have lived with it. So
yeah
it was really hard for me to make that decision. But I also didn't want to be delusional about it. I wanted it to be real if it
sure
was, real.
right
So proof was a big part of my journey. And although the skepticism, I think, made things like I was kind of dragging my feet as I went through this process. That skepticism really helped me use discernment because there's so many different beliefs out there. All the things I studied, there was conflicting information. So that skepticism really helped me, I think, stay grounded, discern what felt right to me and what didn't, and explore things
yeah
and find proof. I did find the proof that I needed, and that actually came through doing readings for others because
hmm
although I had a connection with my daughter, I was communicating with her. Like, I don't know how to prove this is real. Like, how do I prove to myself this is
right
real?
because you have all this information around her too, so
Yeah,
that's like a little harder than someone you don't know and anything about.
yeah. And although it was very healing for me, I still wanted proof that it was real.
Mm-hmm.
So I studied mediumship, evidential mediumship. I did not intend to be an evidential medium. I didn't intend to do readings for other people. I really wanted to hone the skill for myself so that I can
Yeah.
have a connection with my daughter and my family. That I have a lot of family. I have more family and friends that have transitioned than I do living now.
Wow.
Um, so death has been a really big part of my life. Um, but as I was training, we had to do practice readings for other people. I found I could connect with the loved ones of others and bring forth this evidential information and how healing that was. And that was really the proof I needed for myself because I'm like, there's no way I could have known this.
Right.
That was really the proof that I needed to know. And it was very similar. How I got that information and received it was very similar to how I communicate with my daughter.
Yeah.
So it really solidified that for me and allowed me to say, okay, I truly believe this is real. And I know this is real because there's no way I could have known what I share with my.
Yeah. Right. Very cool. And so now is that are you doing readings pretty much full time? Is that you've shifted into, you know, that is your
Yeah, well, for a long time, I really had a hard time stepping out as a medium. Like it took me a lot to share with people that I'm a medium because I'm a business executive, have my own business as a business advisor. I work with, $50 million company CEOs.
yeah.
So it was really a struggle with me internally because I wanted to help other people. And this was such a critical part of my healing journey with grief that I knew this is what I'm here to do. I'm like, I wouldn't be given this ability and my story if I wasn't here to help others. Like I felt like I needed to help others through that. And I was very passionate about it. But at the same time, my identity, security, and everything was wrapped around this business persona that I've had for 30 years. And I'm
Yeah.
a well respected business advisor. So I had this big struggle for a long time with that.
Yeah.
And I would like just like my spiritual work for 20 years, I would kind of be in the closet about it and not want to
Mm-hmm.
put it out there. So I would help people that would find their way to me, but really try to keep it under the radar until I had to work through a lot of those security issues,
Yeah.
being okay with people not understanding me because the people I did share about it, whether it my friends, family, and my husband was very supportive of me,
That's
even though he
great.
doesn't necessarily believe in it. He does now, but at the beginning of it, he was like, I don't know what this is, but I support you in it. And
Yeah.
um,
Wow.
for him, when I had that visit from my grandmother and I told him about it, I don't know how to explain this, but my grandmother just visited me and told me there's a death in my family. I'm crying.
Wow.
So when that happened, I think that for him, that was kind of a, whoa, this is
Yeah.
possible, you know?
Yeah.
But
Right. Right. Right.
my,
Because you called it out, and then it happened.
but my business colleagues that I did share it with, the very few that I felt comfortable with, I kind of got like blank stares, like I don't know what to say. This is outside of my realm, and I don't know what to say about it.
Yeah.
So I kind of went through this period of feeling really isolated and alone because
Yeah.
it shifted a lot in my life, personally and professionally.
Yeah. Right. Right.
More
Um.
and more, I studied and practiced, and I worked with a lot of different teachers. I did hundreds of readings, recorded them in my journal, kind of as my proof to myself, like
Yeah.
I can do this. This is real. It took me several years of doing that before I finally stepped out as a professional and put it out there. And I think the universe kind of pushed me into that because I was doing a podcast for a business, an entrepreneurial podcast for a business.
Mm-hmm.
And the co-host found my Evidential Medium site and brought it up on the air.
Oh
So
wow!
that's
Just
kind of
kind
how
of
I was like,
blew
okay,
you
this
up
is
on
time.
air. Wow. That's kind of a interesting ambush. Wow. Well, forced you out there, right?
It did.
They did their job.
It did. Yeah.
Well, could I'd love to hear as what a fascinating story, and my heart just goes out to you. Like I said, I've been dealing with processing grief of a breakup in the last 6 weeks, and I mean the level of grief from losing your child and your mother, and that I just I I've experienced more grief than I ever have in the last month or so. And it's like a whole nother level, that something like that, and so I'm curious how long did well how much did it how quickly did you start getting communications that were like evidential, and did how much did that help with the grieving process and the healing process? And I'm curious about that.
Yeah. I mean, I started training right away, and right away I was getting evidential information. So from the very beginning, and my daughter was very adamant about sending signs. Wow.
Wow.
So that happened right away, and that was a huge, huge piece of my ability to move on in life because at the same time, I had a business colleague, her husband passed, and she committed suicide.
Wow.
She couldn't deal with that loss. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I didn't have this proof, I don't know if I would make it.
Yeah.
And, I feel like my daughter was really reaching out to say, this is part of our journey together. And,
Yeah, right.
I'm
It's like a
okay and
soul.
I'm
It's a
here and
soul
I'm with
contract,
you.
right?
Yeah. Especially for traumatic death. Some people out there will say if they die a traumatic death, they have a traumatic experience on the other side, or they're stuck, or this or that. So there's all these fears around that too.
Yeah,
And that was confirmation for me, as well as a lot of readings that I've done, that that's not the case.
yeah, right.
And it also made me realize how important this work is because if it can save someone's life, they would have this confirmation from a loved one.
Yeah, right,
It saves people's lives.
right, right. Um, yeah. I'd love to hear, some of the signs and messages that maybe helped you. What you received, if you care to share.
Yeah. Well, the very next day after my daughter's death, I received my first,
Wow.
and her and I had we're kind of advocates for bats, which I know might sound weird. It's not a
For
common
bats?
thing. Yes,
That's funny.
like bat conservation. Um, we would send each other like pictures of baby bats like dressed up and cute little bat pictures on Facebook
It's
Messenger
funny. I
all the
just
time.
created a flyer for an event we're having at the co-living and event space, and it's for Halloween, and we have bats all over it.
Okay, yeah. So we had, we would always be sending pictures to each other of bats, and um, we donated to a bat conservation society.
Wow.
There's a lot of things happening with bats, but the next morning I was up really early at 5 a.m. letting my dog out, and it was probably 5, 6 o'clock. It was when the sun was starting to come up, and I was standing in my yard, and I look up, and there were two bats flying above my head in my
Oh,
yard.
wow. Wow.
And they usually don't come out at that time. They come out at dusk, and
Yeah.
there were two of them.
Wow.
And that made me go, oh my gosh, there's two bats right above my head in my yard
Wow.
at dawn. And um, that made me feel like this is her, but then I questioned it.
Yeah.
So the next morning, I'm like, Kira, if that's you, do that again. I really need to know this is you. I go out at the same time. They were there again.
Wow.
That was the last time I saw them. But that was a huge sign for me for it to happen twice
Right.
in that way. And it's, winged creatures are often vehicles for signs. Our loved ones use them to send us signs, but it's the odd behavior that they do that kind of helps solidify that.
Yeah.
That was a big one. Another big one was that week I was planning her funeral, and
Mm-hmm.
I had to take all of the pictures for the video and song choices to the funeral home for them to prepare her video.
Yeah.
And I had to pick two songs. I could only figure out one. The second one I just could not decide on. And I'm like, I gotta go. I don't know. I might just have them. I didn't know what I was gonna do. So I got in my Jeep. I'm pulling out of the driveway. And as I got on the road, all the radio stations that were programmed went static. So I was just kind of flipping through the stations, and only one song would come in. And it was the song that I called her song, which was Sweet Child of Mine by Guns N' Roses. And that's the
Oh,
only song that would play on my radio.
wow.
No other stations would come in except for that song.
They just, in normally you can hear the stations fine. They were just all blocked
Yeah.
out. Wow.
So I put that song, that was the second song in her video. So
Wow.
those were some of the bigger signs that I had. And, that continued throughout the week. And she sent me a lot of them. And over time, they started becoming less and less. It takes a lot of energy for our loved ones to send us signs like that.
Yeah. Right. Wow. So as you then began your own journey, tapping in get receiving messages, how long was it until you actually started doing readings and things for other people?
Well, I did readings pretty much right away when I started training, but professionally, it was a couple of years. So it's been
Got it.
about 2.5 years.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. And you said that you deal a lot with um, people who've lost children and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just through podcasts that I do or my story being out there, but I do work with a lot of parents who have children who have transitioned from suicide, drug overdoses, um, people, all types of people and family members or friends, not just those, but those tend to be, common for me to have people come to me that have with loved ones who have experienced either traumatic death or overdose or
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So, how do you feel about, I was telling you before we began, I had a spirit visitation from my grandfather and grandmother in the dream state. And I've told this story on the podcast before, but it was pretty cool because he like introduced me to someone and then I researched him and it's a real person. And, I could share the story, but I've shared it a bunch on the show before and it led to my son getting an acting role. And it's a really inspiring kind of communication. And so I'm curious if you think, you know, I imagine you think everyone has intuitive and psychic ability and the ability to tap in beyond the veil. It's just a matter of if they're deciding to focus in that direction and work out that muscle. Would you agree with that?
yeah, I think everyone's got the capability for it.
Yeah.
It's what is their mindset around it? There's
Yeah.
all different beliefs out there. So what you believe about it. Um, Sometimes people come from a religion that says it's a bad thing. So it's really just all about I call it empower your mind. You really have to empower your mind. And
Yeah.
like I said, use discernment and things because
Yeah.
there's all different kinds of things that people say out there. You have to discern that for yourself. But,
Yeah.
you know, I think that everyone's got intuition. Just whether we have a right brain and a left brain. Left brain is the more logical side of your brain. Right brain is more of the creative, intuitive side.
Yeah.
So the more we can be creative and tap into that right side of the brain is really
Yeah.
helpful there too.
Yeah.
And since you
Yeah.
mentioned dreams, I just wanted to share our loved ones in heaven often do visit us in dreams. And those dreams tend to be very, like emotional in a good way. Like, oh my gosh, I feel like I got to be with them, or like, a sense of that. But there's also dreams that we can have about our loved ones who transition that don't feel good. And I just want to differentiate. The ones that don't feel good are our subconscious processing grief.
Ah,
So there is a difference there. So not every dream you have necessarily a visit. So that's the
right. Right.
difference.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. You're saying they can appear in your dream, but it's not necessarily them appearing in your dream. Right. And if it's of negative origin, you feel like that's a more of a subconscious processing thing.
Part of the subconscious
Yeah.
releasing that grief and dealing with it.
Yeah. Gotcha. Gotcha.
I've had both, so I can tell you they're very different in feeling.
say that again.
I've had both types, and I can tell
Mm-hmm.
you they're both very different.
Yeah. And have you had the experience of, like, how do you perceive when you get the messages? Is it, clairaudience? Is it clairvoyance? Are you seeing spirits? Like, what is your experience?
So I visually see it, so clairvoyant. I also clairaudiently hear it. That's probably not the strongest sense that I have, but I do hear.
Mm-hmm.
I would say initially I see clairvoyantly who's coming through and start describing them, but immediately I feel that person. So feeling is my biggest sense, but I also can visually clairvoyantly see.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling is my biggest sense, and then claircognizance, which is clear knowing
Yeah.
as well, and then sometimes clear audience,
Mm-hmm.
just
Gotcha.
hearing.
I see. Yeah, very cool. So, what would you recommend for someone who wants to open up more themselves? I mean, is it something where you feel like they need to go and find a mentor and go a certain path, or is this something that people can do on their own? What would you say to that?
So just to clarify, if they wanted to become a medium or if they
Yeah,
want
if
to
they want
connect
to
with their
start
loved
like,
ones,
I want to tap in and talk to my grandmother or mother, whoever I miss on the other side, what would
yeah,
you suggest?
I work privately with my clients and I teach them how to have that connection with their loved ones if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone wants to. Sometimes people just want a reading so they have
Yeah.
that confirmation. Some
Yeah.
people really want to have that continuous connection.
Mm-hmm.
So I work with them to make sure it's a healthy connection. We don't want to develop codependency or, things like that. So the intention there is one of love and healing.
Yeah.
We don't want to be codependent or what I mean by that is feel like we have to have this in order to live because
Yeah.
that brings our vibration down and our loved ones in heaven have a higher frequency than we do.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a body weighing them down. So the more, we are stuck in the darkness of grief and in those heavier emotions, the harder it is for us to have that connection because our loved ones, have to meet us there to do that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the irony here is yes, you can have a connection with your loved ones. But you also have to do your inner work.
Yeah.
And that to me was a really difficult part for me because I thought if as long as I can connect with my daughter and have that connection, I can make it through this.
Mm-hmm.
But I really struggled with complex grief, PTSD, and I had a lot of physical health issues I had to
Mm.
work through.
Mm.
So it just became like all the trauma of my childhood that I never processed and um, all of the grief that came on my journey just kind of all hit my body at once. I had a lot of health issues
Yeah.
and took some time off to really work on releasing trauma in my body. I work with a somatic trauma therapist and doing a lot of trauma release in the body and doing a lot of my own inner work.
Yeah.
And had to work on past trauma too, not just the trauma of losing my daughter and mother. And I don't even like the word, the phrase losing because we really don't lose them.
Yeah.
We lose the physical experience with them, but they're not lost.
Yeah.
They are with us.
Have you been able to have like full communications with your daughter and
Yeah,
mother? So can you share some of
yeah.
what that's like and what's relayed? Is there information about the other side relayed or
Yeah, I connect with my daughter every day. She's actually a spirit guide for me, and she works with me during readings, and that's part of our work together. My mom, I actually didn't have a connection with her for about a year until after her passing, until I had a connection with my mom. But my mom and I had a lot of unresolved stuff in life that we never got a chance to resolve or have closure to. And it was, it was difficult for me not having that closure when she
yeah.
transitioned.
Yeah.
So it took me quite a while to have that connection with my mom, but my daughter every day, like I said, she's my spirit guide and works with me to connect with others. And in life, she was studying to be a interpreter and translator. She loved language, so she knew Japanese, German, French, and
Wow. Your daughter?
now she's yep. So
Wow.
she's still interpreting and translating, but just in a whole different way that we did.
Wow.
So I do connect with her every morning, and wanted to, also share because you had asked me if someone wanted to have that connection, just to finish that answer. Empowering your mind is a part of it. Uh, what I call honoring the soul path through my own experience with my loved ones and the many readings that I've done. Common theme is our loved ones on the other side want us to honor their soul path, no
Mm-hmm.
matter how difficult or challenging it was. Our egos tend to think life is supposed to be this way. And when someone goes through a traumatic life, traumatic death, or challenging life or death, our ego tends to want to make it be a different way or think if we could have changed that or if only what I would have done this.
Yeah.
That was a big struggle for me as a mother to say if I would have mothered differently or if I would have done that or. So our loved ones in spirit really want us to honor their soul path as
Yeah.
it was. That can be incredibly difficult, but that is what I call the second step in developing a connection. So empower your mind, honor the soul path, both yourself and your loved one. Uh, Elevate your energy. So that comes along with those, our emotions scientifically have been proven to hold vibration and frequency. So we have to do that inner work. We can't just say, okay, I'm not going to grieve anymore. I'm not going to feel depressed anymore because I want to have this connection. We have to do that work, that inner
Yeah.
work to move through that. And I would say to anyone out there experiencing that, find someone that you resonate with to help you with that. It's really difficult to do it on your own,
Yeah.
but you can do it. Um, then also engaging your intuition. That
Yeah.
intuition is the language of spirit and how we communicate. It's
Mm-hmm.
not it's not through our physical senses for most people. So
Yeah.
really engaging your intuition.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a cool synchronicity because one of the things what you're saying there about, elevating your emotions and tapping into really the quantum field, right? And making that a daily conscious effort is something surprisingly. I mean, I've been on this podcast for, doing this podcast for 10 years. And I always say I started it because it's elevates my vibration. But as far as a lot of like disciplined work, meditation, things like that, I've tended to not be as disciplined as I could be. And in recent months, I started really focusing on that. And then with, even the breakup that I just went through, um, it really is catalyzed. Like I'm at a necessity. I'm finding, yeah, I'm needing to get into a state of empowerment and shifting my state. And this morning, just before this recording, I had a really powerful, emotional elevating after hours earlier having a really tough time, then coming out of it and fully elevating my state and realizing like, oh my gosh, everyone should be doing this. And you know, and so I just kind of I had the download of, oh my gosh, I want to start doing this, but recording it and sharing what I'm doing and inviting other people in. So I literally just bought the URL shiftyourstate.now an hour ago. So,
Oh, wonderful.
and I'm going to start live streaming some of my own experience and inviting people. Let's, you know, shift your state, shift your reality, you know, shift your state, shift our reality. And so it's really exciting for me because I mean, it's literally just kind of been coming. I've been having such powerful experiences doing it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how have I not been doing this every day? And it's so suited for who I am to be able to get in that like really elevated state where I'm feeling so much power from, you know, the quantum field. Um, and it's like it just occurred to me this morning doing it like I need to share this with other people as a I've been really feeling into what is next for me as a unique way of showing up and helping the collective, and I feel like that will be also it will check the box of my desire to be unique and do something a little different too. So yeah, I that's a cool synchronicity you saying that because that's something I'm literally kind of feeling lit up about this morning. And
Would you say that the grief that you're feeling with your experience kind of been the catalyst for that to get
100%.
into it?
100%. It's like, oh my gosh, I've got to get my state from this remorse and loss and regret and you know pain, daggers of remembering you know moments or where missed opportunity to make things different, you know, and and then you know tapping into hold on, I'm creating my reality. I am empowered. You know, I can what happens I can stay lost in grief, which will only bring more things to grieve, or I can use it as a catalyst to pull myself up and empower myself more. And so yeah, 100% it's a catalyst, and I can see it very clearly how necessary. I've been sort of complacent for a number of years in my own journey. And, you know, I've talked very candidly about this. This podcast was top 5 on spirituality for many years. And I was doing this late night style show. I had all this momentum. And then I kind of lost inspiration a little, and COVID hit, and kind of going through my own dark night of the soul a little bit, like working through my blockages to social media and like, oh gosh, everyone's doing the same stuff, yawn, you know, like, and now I'm feeling for the first, but as a catalyst of this grief, I'm feeling like, okay, it's time. I need to really step, you know, I feel like a man or woman must be what they can be, you know, and it's like, I've helped a lot of people on their own spiritual journey and awakening. And, but I haven't even tapped the surface of what's possible if I fully activate my empowerment and take control of my emotions and step into the next version of myself. And so, yeah, I mean, huge catalyst
Yeah,
to
I
help me do.
often say that grief can be a downward spiral into self-destruction, or it can be a doorway to spiritual awakening.
Yeah,
And I went both ways. I had to keep course correcting through that. It was
right.
hard for me to
Me
stay
too.
with that, but
Me too.
that's part of the journey, I think, you know.
Yeah, I'm literally like, I've got to take control of my mind and my thoughts. I'm like, this is dangerous. Like I'm going to be in a depressive state for indefinitely if I don't do some, you know, and changing my state is, and then when I do that, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so powerful. Like I feel so energized and lit up, and then the grief can come back and stuff. But it's like now it's like I'm like addicted to shifting my state, and so it feels like a powerful tool. And I think you know all of us should be accessing the quantum field and doing this daily. Like what talk about? It's like you can try and do things out there to shift your world, but there is no out there out there. It's all a reflection of your internal state,
All a
you know.
reflection. Yeah.
And so you know, yeah, I feel like I've kind of tapped in very recently to something like, oh, I really have a gift for doing this, and I could really help others do it as part of just my who I am and my, you know, so it feels like a part of my dharmic path to step into this next.
Are you
And
familiar with Dr. David Hawkins' work?
sitting on my nightstand is Letting Go by David Hawkins.
Power versus Force kind of explains that frequency of the different emotions, but
Right.
Healing and Recovery is a great book because that's been a book to really help me through my grief
Mm,
and all
well,
of the. I consider grief to be a bundle of emotions. It's not one thing. It's
no.
all kinds of emotions in there,
Yeah.
from love to
Anger.
anger, shame, blame, like
Yep.
all of it.
Regret.
Um, his book, Healing and Recovery, has
Oh,
been
wow.
really helpful
Cool.
for me.
I wasn't familiar with that one. Yeah, someone just recommended Letting Go, and I knew I read Power versus Force many years ago.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'll have to check that one out as well. But
I think what helped me really, because I wasn't born, I didn't grow up as a child communicating with people in spirit. Um, but I think what really helped me when this transition of my daughter, my mother, and the transition of my life from that, um, I've been doing shamanic healing for 20 years. So shamanic journeying is very much shifting your consciousness and altering
mm-hmm.
your consciousness. So I think that experience really helped me step into this quickly.
Mm,
And I had also been teaching businesswomen how to use their intuition along with their intellect because a lot of executive businesswomen work with a lot of men
yeah,
and they tend to be more logical and it can be
tapping into their
difficult.
masculine. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, difficult to know how to use your intuition without it backfiring on you. So I did a
yeah,
lot of work around that. So anything creative, shift your consciousness, whether it's meditation, journeying, um, just getting out of your head and being creative, whether it's painting or whatever creative pursuit, all of this help
yeah,
with opening the abilities,
yeah, yeah,
intuitive abilities.
yeah. Agreed. And it's like finding what works best for you. I think is part of the journey, and that's the thing that I'm really feeling excited about. Is like, oh, this particular way of tapping in is really working well for me, and it's like, you know,
I'm so excited for you. I can't wait to
yeah,
hear more.
yeah, thank you. Well, you'll be seeing me posting some things about it, inviting people to experience it and maybe even have people, because I have a co-living and event space, have people and do something live with it as well. And then share also online and just see who wants to, you know, it's almost like an active, meditation sort of thing. So,
I love
um,
that. It's so needed.
yeah, yeah, I definitely feel like it is my lane, and so I'm excited to explore it further because it's so fresh and new for me personally. So to just start inviting others into it, it's going to be a lot. So do you also have? I'm curious, as your mediumship abilities opened up. Obviously, that's a form of psychic intuitive phenomenon. Are you also having like that sort of stuff happen where do you do readings for people, uh
I stick
outside of
solely to
mediumship?
evidential mediumship. I do get intuitive hits on things, but I don't offer psychic readings just because
Gotcha.
I feel like uh, my purpose and passion here is really to focus on the
Yeah.
mediumship side of things and also grief recovery, grief and trauma recovery.
Yeah.
So I tend to stick more to evidential mediumship reading. I do shamanic healing work though, so
Hmm.
I offer kind of the whole package to my clients if they want one-on-one support. Because in my journey, I worked with an astrologer, spiritual healer, evidential medium, trauma coach. I worked with all these different people. I kind of do all that. So I offer packages to my clients to help them with all the different elements of living after loss,
Yeah.
whether it's
Gotcha.
communicating with loved ones, finding purpose again, uh, processing all of those emotions. We don't want to shove them down or try to avoid it.
Yeah.
We've really got to work through it. But as you said, it's all about where your mind is at. So
Yep.
coming from the higher mind and not the lower self mind
Yep.
in that.
Yeah. Yeah, forcing you to, in my case it's like, okay, you better take control. You better learn how to control these thoughts. And it is definitely a two-step forward, one step back, and you have moments of like, you know feeling okay, I feel really solid, and then it's like 4 in the morning when I wake up, maybe not so solid, start racing and going down a rabbit hole. And I'm curious how that's been for you. Now it's been a few years, right? Since you lost them both. Has it
I'm
gotten,
in my 5th year.
oh, okay, in your 5th year. Wow. And has it gotten easier? Do you still find a lot of grief coming up, or, I'm
I
curious.
do. I miss my daughter so very much. I can't
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
express.
Yeah.
I still have grief. I'm always going to grieve her death, to be honest. I'm so grateful I have spiritual connection with her, but I'm never going to be a grandma, never going to get to see her get married and have all of those experiences. And being a mom was my greatest purpose. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of grief around all of that and the life I thought I was supposed to have.
Yeah.
But the nature of my grief has changed.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, well, as we start to wind down here, I'm curious. I love to hear inspiring stories. I mean, in your story in general is inspiring. It's also heartbreaking, but inspiring. But any stories that you have of readings or synchronicities or serendipities, positive paranormal stories, visitations, that is inspiring. I would love to hear. It's kind of a go-to on the show. So curious if you have anything fun up your sleeve.
Yeah. I'll share a little bit about a couple of readings that I've done without sharing any names or anything to protect
Sure.
privacy. But I did a reading for a woman. It was a group reading. So it was a group of 8 people, and I had the first uh, loved one that came through was son, and he had passed as a teenager, and he came through with messages of gratitude for his parents for setting up a scholarship. He was a football player. They had I had mentioned the scholarship. He's bringing up the scholarship. He said we just awarded those yesterday,
Wow.
and he also said that his girlfriend that was with him when he was alive was really having a hard time passing. He acknowledges that, and he had a message for her that he wanted his mother to pass on, and she had shared just how important that message was from him for her
Mm-hmm.
at this time. So I love when those synchronistic things happen in a reading where there's something happening right now, because sometimes in an evidential mediumship reading, we get that evidence so we can validate who it is, but they often have messages that are relevant now
Yeah.
that can make a big impact in your life
Yeah.
or other loved ones around you.
Yeah.
So that one, another one that I thought was really synchronistic was I was doing another group reading, and I had a grandfather come through. He was a very affluent person, very well known in the community. And when he transitioned, he was coming through for his granddaughter,
Mm-hmm.
and he came through with a huge apology. And at first, nobody claimed to this grandfather. And then, right when I was about to say, "Okay, it happens sometimes, rarely, but it happens," this girl raised her hand and she said, "That's my grandfather. I'm just in so much shock right now because I recently did a 23andMe test and found out I had all these other half siblings, and my grandfather had another or half cousins and whatnot because her grandfather had another family.
Yeah. Wow.
And it came out after his death, and it was kind of kept secret in her family. So for him to come through with that apology as she was learning about this, having a
Wow.
difficult time with that,
Wow.
um, was
Wow.
pretty synchronistic on the timing of it.
Yeah, that happened with my grandfather. They used to joke that my dad was like a teenager ish age, or maybe even a little older, late teens, 20. That there was jokes going around about the baby across the street and my grandfather, and turns out we just found out like a couple years ago, like it was real, and that he had fathered this child with the neighbor across the street, and no one knew until, I mean, she's now probably in her 60s or something, but or yeah, probably somewhere around there, but no one had any idea. I think that kind of thing happens, especially, it seems like in the past it happened even more. But yeah, what a wild thing to find out, you know
Yeah.
surprise.
Yeah, and then have your loved one come through and with that apology, at the same time, I think just helped her to start finding some closure.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, this has been very enlightening, Kim. And, your story is, like I said, heart wrenching and inspiring. And I just applaud you to sign up for the path that your soul has signed up for is like, wow, not for the faint of heart. I just, yeah, the amount of processing and grief you've had to go through, I can only imagine. And in order for us to get the benefit and the people that are benefiting from the work that you do, that's all sort of a sacrifice that you've made. And I just want to honor that and thank you for that. And yeah, keep going. I am sure you will. I'm sure. Do you feel as inspired as ever to continue the work?
I do. I mean, it's been. I'm not going to say it's been easy. Like I said, I've had my um, heels in the sand for a long time, and I realized life is short, and
It really is.
for me, letting go of security and safety in the way I had defined it before was
Yeah.
a huge part of my own personal growth,
Yeah.
and really saying yes to what my soul was calling me to do.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you're kind of in a similar position where you're going through grief, and it's been a catalyst to this offering that you're going to be putting out there. And
Yeah.
I want to thank you for that too, because I know it's not easy. It's potent. It's
Yeah.
when we can really relate and empathize with people and uh, be an inspiration for people, I think that's
Yeah.
it's really big medicine.
Yeah. I mean, that's really what we're all here to do. And, in one way or another is, if you want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others, as Gandhi said. And I always say that holds true because there are no others. And so it's all in, you know, in service for God to experience herself and for us to all, grow together. And it's a beautiful, poetic, tragic, incredible story of love at the end of the day. And I love the quote about death. Um, well, let me see if I can find it real quick. You've probably seen this Rumi quote before. He said, "This place is a dream. Only a sleeper considers it real. Then death comes like dawn, and you wake up laughing at what you thought was your grief." I love that one.
Yeah, that's a big theme I get from messages that come through for loved ones is there's so much more and it's so much bigger and better than we could ever imagine. And
Yeah,
what we're experiencing now, as living people who are grieving,
liver.
we're going to realize one day that it's not as big and terrible as it feels in the moment, like
Yeah,
where
right.
that gets reconciled. And
Yeah,
thank you for sharing that.
yeah, and they. I like the idea too, and I'm curious what your thoughts are. Of like when you die, everyone is there, even the people that you left behind living, because you're in a timeless state. So, like, you would have been there. Some part of yourself, your higher self, is there when your daughter transitions, as an example. I think that's a really beautiful, you know, realization and thought too. And I'm curious if that you're
Yeah, it is. And that's been probably one of the hardest things for me is I can't wait to die to be with my daughter again.
mm-hmm.
That's such something I'm looking forward to. So it was a really big conflict for me. So I got to the point where I said, I cannot wait to be with my daughter in a closer way when I transition. And in the meantime, I'm grateful to support others
Yeah,
while I'm here.
yeah,
So there's the and in there.
yeah,
So
right,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm
It'll be nice to
looking
wake
forward
up
to that
laughing
day.
at your grief, right?
So,
Well, this has been wonderful, Kim. Thank you so much for taking the time. And um, if you would share, what's the best way for people to connect with you and follow your work and reach out if they feel inspired to do so, get a reading.
yeah, my website is kimcoots.com, KIMCOOTS.com. And my social handle is at kimcootsmedium.
Gotcha. Well, I do have one final question for you, and it is this. It's my cliche closer. In 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life according to Kim Coots?
The meaning of life is to create, learn, experience, and grow on a soul level.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, I appreciate you growing with me here today and all the listeners. And yeah, I appreciate all of you out there for tuning in your beautiful brainwaves and incredible hearts to another episode. Till next time, journey well.
Thank you.